This block of ice was cut from a frozen pond in Massachusetts. 4 months later, men were unloading it in India, in summer. It had crossed the equator twice in a wooden ship with no refrigeration. Planks, sawdust, and nerve. And more than half of it was still frozen. The man who sent it had already lost a fortune. The newspapers laughed at him. His debts put him in jail twice. Then he built a global empire selling winter. And the quiet machine humming in your kitchen right now is the thing that erased it. This is the story of how cold became boring. To understand why anyone would ship frozen water across the planet, you have to forget your freezer exists. For almost all of human history, cold had a season. Winter made ice, summer took it away, and no power on Earth could reverse that. The rich could cheat, a little. Cut pond ice in January, bury it in an underground ice house, pack it in straw, pray some of it lasted until August. That's what an ice house was. A hole in the ground, a roof, and hope. Kings had them. Emperors had them. That was the ceiling of human cold technology for thousands of years. A fancy hole. Everyone else drank warm water and watched their food rot. And that was the lucky half of the planet. In the tropics, ice wasn't rare. It did not exist. There were people in Martinique, in India, who had never once felt anything colder than well water. Think about what that means. No cold drink on the hottest day of your life. No way to keep meat past sundown. Nothing to press against a child's fever. Ice was not a convenience. It was a miracle with a melting point. Which is exactly why a 22-year-old in Boston looked at a frozen pond and saw a gold mine. Enter Frederic Tudor, 1806, son of a wealthy Boston family and carrying an idea that made his own family wince. New England ponds froze solid every winter. Free ice. Endless. Renewed every year by the sky. His plan? Cut it out, sail it south, and sell winter to people who had never seen it. The Boston papers covered his first shipment as a joke, and at first the joke held. His first cargo reached the island of Martinique. And then, it just sat there. No ice house on the island to store it. Buyers who had no idea what ice was even for. His miracle melted into the harbor, and Tudor lost $4,500. Call it $90,000 today. He tried again. He lost again. He spent years dodging creditors, and by 1812, he was locked in debtor's prison. He got out. He went back in. Picture that for a second. You're the rich kid who bet everything on frozen water. Your family is embarrassed. The newspapers use you as a punchline. And now you're sitting in a cell, twice, for an idea everyone told you was stupid the first time. Every signal the world can send is telling you to stop. Here is where every sensible version of this story ends. But failure is data, and Tudor's disasters kept pointing at the same two problems. Cutting ice was too slow, and keeping it frozen was too hard. The answers turned out to be a plow and a pile of garbage. Problem 1. Harvesting. Men with handsaws produced slow, lumpy, mismatched blocks. So Tudor's partner, Nathaniel Wyeth, built a horse-drawn ice cutter. Horses dragged a bladed plow across the frozen pond, scoring it into a giant checkerboard. Workers popped the squares free like breaking a chocolate bar. Every block identical. Identical blocks stack tight. Tight stacks trap the cold and leave warm air nowhere to go. Overnight, a frozen pond stopped being scenery. It became a crop. Whole crews worked the lakes like farmers work a field. Scrape the snow, score the grid, pop the blocks, float them down open channels of black water to the ice house, where men with hooks stacked them 5 stories high. In January, in New England, ice was harvested with the same seriousness as wheat, because that's what it was now. A harvest that fell from the sky, free, every single winter. Problem 2. Melting. The answer was garbage. Literal garbage. Sawdust. Lumber mills were drowning in it and gave it away free just to be rid of it. But sawdust is millions of tiny pockets of trapped air, and trapped air barely moves heat. It is the same trick the insulation in your walls is doing right now. Pack ice in sawdust, and suddenly it could survive an ocean. In 1833, Tudor proved how much ocean. His ship, the Tuscany, left Boston carrying 180 tons of ice. Think about what that voyage actually was. 4 months in a wooden hull, through the tropics, twice across the equator, the ocean outside warm as bathwater, and below deck 180 tons of New England winter, sitting quiet in the dark, wrapped in sawdust, slowly losing a fight with the entire climate of planet Earth. And when the hatches opened in Calcutta, 100 tons were still frozen. He had shipped winter across the equator and lost less than half. Witnesses said people touched it and pulled their hands back. Some had never felt cold before. Not once. And here it was, from a pond on the other side of the world. India alone went on to earn him more than $200,000. In today's money, over $8 million. The papers stopped laughing. They started calling him the Ice King. And the trade did not just grow. It got strange. In England, ice from one Massachusetts lake, Wyndham Lake, became a luxury brand. A brand for frozen water. American ice sailed to the Caribbean, to London, to Hong Kong. Ice houses swelled until some could swallow 250,000 tons. At its peak, the harvest put 90,000 Americans to work every winter. They even came for Walden Pond. In the winter of 1846, Henry David Thoreau sat in his cabin and watched a crew carve his famous pond apart, block by block. He wasn't angry. He wrote, almost in awe, that the pure water of Walden would travel and mingle with the sacred water of the Ganges. He was right. That is exactly where it was going. Now rewind 1 year, 1834, 12 months after the Tuscany docked in Calcutta. At the very peak of the miracle, an inventor named Jacob Perkins quietly patented a machine that could make cold. Compress a gas, let it expand. It drinks the heat out of everything around it. Every refrigerator on Earth, including yours, still runs on that one idea. The Empire's killer was born 1 year after the Empire proved itself, and nobody noticed. For decades, the machine stayed leaky, clumsy, and expensive, and natural ice stayed king. Tudor died in 1864, rich, celebrated, and spared the ending. Because the machines kept improving, and nature kept failing. City ponds turned foul with pollution. Nobody wants ice with a history. And then came the warm winters. Ice famines, they called them. Whole regions stranded when the lakes refused to freeze. Ice prices spiking like oil prices. Dealers sailing north in a panic, looking for anything frozen. Think about how fragile that is. An entire industry whose factory was the weather. One mild January, and the machine that never checked a thermometer started to look less like a gimmick and more like the future. Factory ice was clean, predictable. It never once checked the weather. By 1914, America made more ice in factories than it cut from nature. Then the machine walked into the house. In 1927, General Electric released the Monitor Top, the first refrigerator an ordinary family could afford. And that was that. The pond still froze every single winter. And nobody came. 90,000 jobs. Ships that carried winter across the equator. A luxury brand of lake water. Erased in 1 generation by a quiet, white box. So here is the part that should feel strange. Tonight, you will walk past a machine that makes cold out of nothing. All day, every day, for free. If you want ice, you will press a button and it will fall into your glass. You have never once thought about it. But that little clatter of cubes is the sound of a dead empire. Frozen lakes carved into checkerboards. Sawdust packed by hand in the dark of a ship's hold. A 22-year-old laughed out of Boston, jailed twice, and proven right. We did not just invent cold. We forgot cold was ever hard. And somewhere in your house, right now, is the next ice trade. Something so hard it takes an industry, an army, a fortune. One day, your grandkids will press a button for it, and it will fall out, and they will never think about it once. Every boring thing you own was once impossible. The ice in your glass just took 200 years to get boring.